Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and in today's video, I'd like to take this chance to expound on a few points that I made in my review and in my follow-up video regarding The Last of Us Part 2 that I put out earlier this week. So there's been a common theme throughout some of the criticisms that I've received, and I want to just take this chance to address that in sort of a blanket video as opposed to going through and commenting back to everybody individually. I just simply can't keep up at this point. But there's a couple of things that I see keep popping up again and again and again, so I need to address this stuff today. And the first thing that I want to discuss is the notion that I put forth in the video that Joel is in fact the villain of the game, whereas in the first game I felt like it was a lot more ambiguous. Now, sort of proving my point is the fact that in the comment section of that last video, I had many people going back and forth saying, of course Joel was the hero in the first game, what are you talking about? And some people were saying, of course Joel is the villain, how is it even in question? And the fact that so many different people have opposing viewpoints really proves my point of what I was saying about the ending of the first game. It was supposed to be ambiguous. You were supposed to not know exactly how to feel. Even though Joel did some things that were certainly questionable throughout the entire game, was he really a true hero or a true villain in your book? And, like I said in my original review, people aren't on a consensus with that. It's very much a split decision. So everyone coming in and saying, of course, he's obviously this or that, you're only kind of proving my point because there's so much divide there. Now, my contention is that in the sequel, Joel is clearly presented as a villainous character, and that's what I want to discuss today because I did have an awful lot of people telling me that I didn't understand what was going on in the story and how is Joel the villain. Let me explain to you how I feel that Joel is the villain in The Last of Us Part 2. Now, of course, all of this comes with a caveat. Everything I'm about to discuss for the next few minutes throughout and this is not the only part of the story that I'm going to discuss, but everything I'm about to discuss comes with the caveat. I understand that all of these characters, the main characters, have morally gray areas. It's not like I don't understand that, and I think that everything is completely in black and white. I think there's too many people that think that I believe that. I know it's not black and white, but when I say stuff like Joel is presented as the villain, when I say stuff like Abby is really presented as the hero of the game, and I'm going to get into Ellie in just a little bit, I want to say, I know that there's moral issues at stake that are not fully realized one way or the other, and that there is some ambiguity on whether or not we're supposed to view every single action of each of these characters in a good or bad light. But overall is the issue I want to present here today with all three of these characters. So let's just get right into it. So first, back to Joel is the villain. That is my contention. Lots of people have an issue with this. Why? Why do I say this? Now, the important thing to understand when I'm discussing all of these points regarding the story that we're going to get into in this video is that you have to think about what the writers' motivations were when they were presenting these characters to us in The Last of Us Part 2. At the ending of the first game, like I said, Joel's character and how we're supposed to feel about him, along with how we felt alongside Ellie at the end of the first game, was a lot more morally ambiguous. How did we feel about what his decision was at the Firefly Hospital? It was more or less left up to us to decide how we felt. In the sequel, in the very first moments of the game, we get a flashback sequence to Joel in the Firefly Hospital and the doctor begging for his life, but more importantly, talking about the progress that this operation on Ellie would have in order to create a cure and save humanity. And in that moment, in the sequel, they chose to take a look and focus in on Joel's face. And the look on his face isn't one of questioning whether or not he should do this, or one of determination to save Ellie. No, the look that comes across his face is a bloodthirsty snarl. The look that comes across his face says, I'm going to kill you no matter what, because that's what I came here to do, and I'm going to kill everyone and save Ellie and get out of here. It's not the look of even an anti-hero. It's the look of a sheer villain. And when you consider the ramifications that the story presents, whereas the doctor that he's supposedly killing in this Firefly Hospital is the only person in the world, apparently, according to the story, who has the ability to maybe create a cure if he kills Ellie. That's how the story is presented. Joel is shown killing the only hope that humanity has right out of the gates in the game. Now, Joel says he would do it again later on in the game. We know that. And many of us as players would probably have made the same decision to save Ellie regardless of the ramifications. But the fact is, in that moment, at the start of the game, and the way it's presented throughout the entire rest of the story, including how it's presented from Abby and her group's point of view towards Joel, Joel has damned mankind to its doom based on his actions at the Firefly Hospital. Now, I'm sorry, if you can't see right away that they are casting him in a villainous role in order you to feel empathy later on as Abby, I don't know what to tell you. It is plain as day when you consider the context of how they present what he did at the hospital. He has destroyed humanity's last hope in that doctor. And by saving Ellie, that is exactly how the Fireflies feel about it. And as we know, Abby and her group are all Splinter's group coming from the Fireflies and joined the WLF. They're a Splinter group. They're all former Fireflies. Abby, her father is the doctor, so that's where her motivation comes from. And we're going to get into Abby in just a little bit. But there's more about Joel here. Consider that every flashback scene that he has with Ellie shows Ellie just either outright screaming in his face, telling him that she doesn't need him because she goes back to the Firefly Hospital to dig up evidence, and she knows the truth now, and she confronts Joel. And after he tells her, yes, this is what I did, this is the truth, she says, I don't need you anymore, get out of my life. We see throughout many scenes throughout the game after that, including in the dance sequence that they show at the end of the game. She's still mad at Joel, all through up to the point where he actually meets his ultimate demise with Abby. Joel, at best in those scenes, is shown as sort of maybe like a divorcee father who's trying to reconnect with his older adult daughter after years of neglect or delinquency. That's how he's presented. The desperate father, desperate for attention from his only daughter, in this case his surrogate daughter. Let's also look at how Abby's group views him. They don't think he got punishment enough. They think he's such a bad villain that even being beaten to death in front of his brother and his own surrogate daughter, that's not punishment enough for old Joel. No. So most certainly, from Abby's side of things, Joel is the villain. From the player's perspective, he is most certainly presented as the villain. Again, he is the villain of all of humanity in this game, the way it's written. If you're going to sit there and try to tell me that I don't understand what they were trying to do, or that Joel's not the villain, I really don't know what game you were playing. I gotta be honest. Now let's move on. One of the other contentions that I've made, especially not so much in the review, but in the comment sections, I've made the contention that Abby is in fact the hero of the game. People say, what are you talking about? The game's morally gray. There are no heroes. There are no villains. Abby is most certainly supposed to be the hero archetype in this game. Abby is the one who has the redemption arc. Abby is the one who takes righteous retribution, whereas Ellie's retribution and revenge is portrayed as sort of down and dirty. She's just doing it for the sheer selfishness of it. Abby has some selfish motivation in that Joel killed her father, but really, like again, hearkening back to what I was just saying, Abby is also taking retribution for the fact that she thinks, and the rest of her group thinks, that Joel has doomed them all and taken away any chance of a cure. That is why Abby goes out on her quest. She has some righteous indignation. She has sort of a holy crusade to take out Joel. And what else do we see? Everyone seems to forget the other side of her storyline. The side with Lev and Yara, where she's this benevolent figure that goes to look out for these two kids. The only reason she gives in the game is because they saved her life. Now, a little dissonance here in the story is because she goes around killing a bunch of her former WLF teammates. You would think that since she's been fighting with them for years now, she's one of the leaders of the army, that maybe some of the people that she kills might have also saved her life at some point, or at least they would have supported each other in some sort of firefights at some point throughout the years, but I guess for the sake of the story, they just ignore that entirely. But the way she's presented is as a hero figure for Lev and Yara. And once again, let's go back to writer's motivation. Now, I don't want to get political here, but I'm just going to state a couple facts. If you're going to get all offended here, you shouldn't be. I'm not trying to offend anybody. But Neil Druckmann has made his political views very clear, and he is fully in support of transsexual rights and transsexual representation in games. Lev is the young Asian character who is the transsexual character in this game. Abby risks everything multiple times to save this character. Knowing what we know about Neil Druckmann's view about these social issues, wouldn't Abby, therefore saving the game's lone transsexual character, mean that she is a hero in Neil Druckmann's eyes? That is certainly a very heroic act and a very noble act, her risking her life for this character. And once again, I'm not making any commentary one way or the other on how Neil Druckmann thinks about this. I'm just saying, from his point of view, he has made it very clear. He is not hiding anything here. And that is how the sequence plays out with Abby and Lev. Abby saves Lev multiple times. She risks her life multiple times. It's part of her redemption arc. Part of showing how she's not the real monster that did what she did to Joel. Even though even people in her group feel like she is a monster, Abby is convinced that she needs to do these things to restore her own humanity. And Lev even says to her in dialogue later in the game, "You're a good person." And Abby's not so sure, but Lev reassures her, "You're a good person, Abby." Abby is the hero. She spares Ellie and Tommy. Yes, she kills Jesse. That's in the heat of a moment type of deal. But when she has time to consider it, she spares Dina as well. She doesn't kill these characters. Ellie, however, doesn't have those sorts of moments until the very, very end of the game. But Abby, throughout, only took quote-unquote retribution on one person, Joel. The other NPCs in the game, those are all, that's gameplay. That's ludonarrative dissonance at work. And Naughty Dog is no stranger to that. But that is why I say Abby is presented as the hero of the game. She has the redemption arc. Ellie doesn't. That's why Abby is the de facto hero of The Last of Us Part 2. Now let's move on. And what I want to discuss next is Ellie and what she represents to this story. Because a lot of people feel like she is the hero of the story, and in some ways you could make that argument. She certainly is a protagonist, there's no doubt about that. And she's not exactly your typical anti-hero either, because in her mind she does have a noble purpose, even though we as the player see that she's very selfish in the way she goes about that. She casts Dina aside at some point, she casts Jesse aside at some point, she casts Tommy aside at some point, and basically she is on her own selfish search for revenge. Now, I've seen a lot of people tell me that I just simply don't understand writing, and they'll try to tell me, "Oh, you don't understand, the story's actually about forgiveness." But you see, that's only the veneer of the story. That doesn't tell you what the writer's actual motivations were. You see, a lot of time in book and film, the writer is just going to tell you a story on the surface, but all of that acts as a metaphor for what they're really trying to get across. And in this game, Ellie represents you. Ellie represents me. She represents the player, the character. She's not just an on-screen avatar. This game is a commentary on us, people who play not just this game in particular, but all violent video games. This game is a mirror being held up to us, the player, to make us question how much we've been desensitized to the violence. That's why the camera shows the violence so often. It's trying to hammer the point home that what you're doing is bad. Now, the fact that I feel like it's very ham-fisted and clumsy, the way they went about it, the way that NPCs will call it, "Oh no, Marco! Oh, they got Marco, guys!" As if I'm going to empathize with just a name. That's not really going to work. But they did try to do stuff like that. I don't think it was successful, but the point is, what they're trying to get across in this game is that what we're doing are the bad actions. It's not Ellie. It's us. And how do we feel about it? Are we capable of setting that aside and learning to be compassionate? Or are we too far gone? Are the actions we take in games, have they desensitized to the point where we just don't care anymore? Ellie is representative of the player. That's the overall meaning behind this game. There's even various video game references throughout the game, including Wendy, the character who cares nothing about playing video games and it ends up getting her killed. Every scene we see her in, she's talking about video games, she's all excited about it, she's got her headphones in playing video games, and that's what ends up getting her killed. There's just sort of some meta-narrative behind the scenes here. Now, you can disagree with me about everything I've said for the last 15 minutes. That's totally fine. You feel free to argue. But this is where I'm coming from when I make these points in my reviews and what I've said in some of the comments to some people as I've been going back and forth in the last week talking about this game. I feel like Joel is clearly presented as a villain character. I feel like Abby is clearly presented as a hero. And in my opinion, the overall meaning behind this game isn't one of revenge or hate or forgiveness, but in fact it's what they were saying all along. It's about the cycle of violence. We, the players, are the ones engaged in the cycle of violence. We're the ones with the cognitive dissonance. Again, this is pretty ironic coming from Naughty Dog games, where the Uncharted series has been famous for commentary about that over the past decade, about the ludonarrative dissonance that happens in that game, as Nate is just this happy-go-lucky treasure hunter who also mows down 500 people per game. That's been sort of the running joke about that series. So, Naughty Dog always has tried to be aware of that, and I've seen them try to tackle this issue before, but never as clearly as they did in this game. Now, again, feel free to disagree with me all you want. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to be misrepresented. I'm not trying... I had one person actually accuse me of slandering Neil Druckmann when I made the suggestion that Neil Druckmann wrote The Last of Us Part 2 in order to present Joel as a villain. So, for all the people who I've made this comment to, that Neil Druckmann has come out before and made comments along these lines, I managed to dig one up, and I want to present that to you right now. So back in 2018 in Variety, Neil Druckmann was doing an interview regarding his inspiration for The Last of Us Part 2 and how he was going about his writing process. And this is the quote that stuck out to me and why I'm telling you that Joel in this game is clearly being presented as the villain. So this is from Neil Druckmann himself 2 years ago. Quote, "For me, this other primal thing is the idea of hate. You can think of instances in your life when you've seen an injustice being committed, and for a split second you think, I would mess up this person. I would make this person pay." In other words, he wants to punish this person. He goes on. So how do we make the player feel that, reflect on that, and show the consequences of violent actions? Which is exactly what they did in this game. Now, what did he say? This is his inspiration here for writing. How can he show the player how he's going to mess this person up? How is he going to punish and give retribution to this character for causing a violent act? And at the end, he says, if you care about the character, I want you to feel these moments. This is what I'm discussing when I say that Joel is clearly the villain to me. Because this was his inspiration behind writing it. He wanted to present the other side of the coin. He knew that the first game was presented in an ambiguous manner, and that's what he wanted. And he actually did a great job getting that across in the first game. In the second game, to me, he even did a good job getting it across in the second game. But a lot of people seem to disagree. But to me, it's plain as day. And when I say that the writer himself views Joel as the villain in the sequel, well, that's the quote. That's one of the quotes I'm pulling from. That was the best one that I had, the most in-depth one, where he had direct quotes talking about how he wants to make this person pay. And that's what I'm talking about when I say Joel's the villain. So anyway, you're free to dispute all that. There's a couple more technical things I want to get into just real quick. I had actually a funny amount of people who were mad at me for when I said that I had a lot of ammo and crafting material throughout the game, and saying, oh, I must have been playing on easy mode or whatnot. Well, no. I was playing on the default difficulty, moderate. And the reason why is because most players who play any game play on normal difficulty. They don't crank it down to easy. Some people do. And most people definitely do not crank it up to the hardest difficulty. Now, I have played all the Naughty Dog games on their hardest difficulties before, besides The Last of Us Part 2. I was reviewing this game, so I'm not going to review an experience that isn't going to be indicative of the vast amount of people that are going to pick up the game and play it. I'm reviewing it for general audiences, not for the hardcore people, the only 1% of people that are actually going to play the game on that hardest difficulty. If you go back and look at the trophy list for The Last of Us Part 1, you'll see that only 1% of people played the game and beat the game on grounded mode. Why would I review a game just for those 99, or just for the 1% of people and ignore the 99% of other people who don't bother with that? I also wouldn't play it on easy mode because that's not indicative either. So everything you see in this game and all my footage, that's all from moderate difficulty. So I hope that explains why I didn't crank up the difficulty meter just for a review. I don't think that gives a proper demonstration of what the game's actually going to be. Pretty simple. I also had many people pointing out that there was, when I did my video discussing the rash of coincidences and the rush plot points at the beginning of the game leading up to the ultimate scene with Abby and Joel and Ellie in the basement, the people have been trying to, oh, there was lines of dialogue later that justify this. There was lines of dialogue here that justify that. Yes, I know that. I played the game. I saw the dialogue. I played with subtitles on, as you can see in a lot of my footage too, just precisely so I wouldn't miss that dialogue. I know that Dina questioned Abby, along the lines of, why do you think they left you alive? And Ellie said, yeah, that's dumb. I don't know. They must be dumb. And I know that Tommy said, oh, there's sometimes hordes roam through here, so we got to look out. I mean, usually it's pretty quiet, but sometimes there's hordes. My point wasn't that any individual point of those rush plot points was necessarily bad. And I even said in my follow-up video, one or two of those coincidences would have been excusable and probably would have even gone unnoticed. But my problem was when they just come one after another, after another, after another. That's when they're rushing through the plot. And one or two lines of dialogue that happen 3 chapters down the road doesn't really justify that. Now, technically, well, they justified it through this line of dialogue. Yes, I get it. They justified it, quote unquote. But it doesn't justify rushing through it. And it doesn't justify... Just having a line of dialogue doesn't mean that it justifies throwing everything at you, just vomiting plot points at you all at once, all in a row, and have them all be massively coincidental. Do they make sense? Overall, like I said, how did Ellie find the house? How did she find the mansion? Well, there was a pile of bodies outside. Okay, yes, there were. They Manny had thrown a Molotov and destroyed a bunch of clickers and runners right outside the gate. Yes, but how did she find that? There had just been a blizzard. Some people suggested, oh, she must have tracked their footprints through the snow. No, there was a blizzard. What footprints? If you live in a part of the country where there's snow all the time, you'll know that snow kind of covers up footprints. And the house wasn't on top of a hill. It was down in a ravine. She couldn't have seen it from a far ways away. She had no way of knowing that the house was there. My thing is, I've seen more people telling me I was nitpicking about that part of the story. And I'm saying that people defending that part of the story are really nitpicking and really trying to bend over backwards, trying to justify every single part of that sequence instead of just looking at the overall picture and realizing that it's just rushed and not well written. And having throwaway lines of dialogue here and there doesn't fully justify it later on. That's my point. And that's the point I was trying to get across in both of my videos anyway. But if you still, like I said, if you want to try to justify individual points, you can do that in some of the cases. My problem is the sheer volume of them and how rapidly they happen. It's not a believable sequence as far as I'm concerned. One last thing I want to discuss, and this to me is, I shouldn't even have to discuss, because it shows that the people who are leaving this comment didn't actually listen to the video. And that's the people, and I'm sure if you are someone who doesn't like the game or has been complaining about the story, I'm sure you've had this thrown at you as well in some sort of comment section somewhere. Is that the only reason you're mad about this game is that you're just upset that Joel died? You must be butthurt. Now, I've released well over an hour of content about this game. Not once did I bemoan the fact that Joel died. Not once. In fact, I thought it was obvious he was going to die from the moment they showed us the first trailer. People who understand how writing and foreshadowing are presented knew right away that showing the silhouette of him in a door with a white background to Ellie in that very first trailer insinuates that he's a dead character and that it's some kind of flashback. And indeed, that scene wasn't necessarily in the game the way it was presented at all. So it was clearly, even in the trailer, they were foreshadowing that he was going to die. So I've been prepared for that for years. I wasn't upset by that. Just same way I wasn't upset when John Marston died at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1, because that was an earned ending. It made sense. Same reason, let's go to film or books. Game of Thrones. When Ned Stark died, I wasn't like, oh my goodness, I hate this now because they killed off the main character. No. And Ned Stark was another great character. No, because it made sense in the story. And I'm not even saying that killing off Joel doesn't make sense in the story. I never once complain about that. I purposely went on my way to not use weak arguments like that. You won't hear me saying, it was a slap in the face to the fans. Even though, in some ways, I feel like Neil Druckmann was trying to rub that in the player's face a little bit. I think that was also part of his motivation. That's why he had Manny spit on Joel after he was dead. I think that was still another way. But I wasn't saying that in my review, and that's not where I'm coming from in my critique. I'm not mad that Joel died. I'm not. Am I thrilled? No. I would have liked to have played the game with him at least for more than the 2 minutes that they give you at the start of the game where you're just riding on the horseback. But the fact remains, I'm not mad about it, and that's not where my critique came from. I'm not biased because I'm mad about Joel. And I said that in a couple of videos ago, even before I did a review. And I don't think most people are. I don't think people are mad because they don't play as Joel. I think they're mad because of why they don't get to. And because the reason why is just some contrived writing that they felt like they had to kill this character off in order to force us into this empathetic moment with Abby and everything else. And I'm probably going to work on another video regarding specifically the Abby storyline, and I'm actually going to do I'm going to try to answer the critics that have come after me once again in that video. Not in a belligerent sort of way, but sort of I want to respawn. People have said, if you have such problems with it, how would you have told it better? How would you have done it better? And while I think that that's largely a useless argument, I mean, if I have a problem with my meal at a restaurant, should I go and learn how to be a chef and go work at a restaurant? If I have a problem with my toilet at my house, should I go and learn how to be a plumber? See, it doesn't work like that. If I have a problem with a video game, I don't need to go develop a video game. But I am going to present to you how I would have presented this particular story with a couple of caveats, but I would have presented it in a different way, and I think it would have been much more impactful and would have actually given us a chance to build up empathy with Abby. And I want to discuss that in a video. Hopefully I'll get that out tomorrow. But either way, that's just a couple. Those are the main criticisms that I've seen in my review. And, you know, some of the points are pretty fair, and some people just, I don't think, really wanted to understand what I was saying or just got mad. They thought that was just trashing on the game and not trying to be fair. I'm trying to be totally fair with this game. And I want to present these responses to you so that way I can just point people to this video instead of having to answer each individual video or each individual comment. That's kind of just overwhelming me at this point. People who've been with me for a while know that I try to get back to everyone, and it's just impossible for me at this point. I got way more views on this video than I ever expected. But anyway, that's it for me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe. If you want to stay in tune with the channel, head forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.